Hi all. In this video, let's learn about React useRef hook. What is useRef and the differences between createRef and useRef, and what happens if you modify the useRef value? Will that be re-render the component or not? So let's see step by step about the useRef. So the first part is what are the refs? Refs are short form, like those are references which will provide a way to access the DOM nodes or React elements. So this is a primary definition of the refs. Why in React we are using references? Why not we can't use IDs? So for that, I have done a dedicated video. I will try to keep that in the end of the cards. Please check that out. Yep. Now, what is the refs? UseRef is a hook which will be available in the React library. How to use this UseRef is I need to import it, the first step. The second step is I need to take the reference of that useRef. In that, you can give the default value. So whatever the value you want to give, you can give this as a default value in the as a first parameter, initial value you can give here. So it will return a reference here. Okay, that reference, that input reference, you can keep. So here, let me explain the example which we are talking about. We'll take a button. So when you click that button, we'll focus the input field. The input field will get the focus. So that is what we are doing. That is a simple example to understand the useRef. So for that, we are going to import the useRef hook and creating a reference for that. If you need, you can give the initial value here. If not, it will give the undefined value. If you're not giving any initial value, it will have the undefined as its value. So now you're giving useRef, and this input element will consist of the reference. Okay, and useRef will have a special property called current. Through this current property only, you can access the DOM nodes or React elements. Okay, so that is fine. So we need to give this ref attribute to the input element, and you need to give this input, the reference, useRef reference you need to give here. So this is how you're going to pick the exact input field. Okay, there are three steps. One is to input, the another one is to give reference, and another one is to you need to ref attribute, use the ref attribute and give the input reference here. So when you click the button, handle input, this function would be called. And now input dot current, as we discussed, the current is a special property through which you can access the DOM nodes. So through this, you are trying to use the focus method to focus the input element. So let's see that output first. So the second one is what we have discussed here. So if I click this button, so now the focus went into the input field. So this is what the usage of useRef. So now let's discuss what's the difference between the createRef and useRef. So this is how the useRef works. And this is a code, example code. Now let's see about the createRef. So createRef also, in terms of code, you can see you have imported createRef instead of useRef. Okay, and you are creating a reference for that, and you will be holding that reference. You will give that reference attribute, and you will give that input element here. And the same current is a special property. It will focus that input element. So this is also same example. If you see, the code part would be the same compared to the useRef and the createRef. Both are the same as per the implementation part. And if you go back to the example, if I click focus, so now it is focusing on the input field. As per the output and the implementation part, both the createRef and the useRef are same. There is no much difference between both of them. Now, what is the real difference between both of them is createRef will create the references each time when the component is re-rendered. It will create a reference. Whenever the component re-renders, it will create a references. That many times it will be creating the references. Okay, whereas useRef means it will only create the references once. Even the component is re-rendered also, it will persist that earlier reference itself. It will not recreate the, or it will not create multiple references. So that's the main difference. We can check that difference with an example as well. So this is another file. So this is the test component. In this, we'll be taking the state, one state. So just in order to show that we'll click a button and we'll modify the state so that the component will re-render. Okay, this is what I'm doing. So just we have a button. If I click this button, we are updating the render index. Okay, we have taken an use state render. index, keeping 1 as a initial value and set render index. So instance, we are trying with the button click, I'm trying to increment or modify the state so that the component re-renders. Okay, that is what the re-render purpose. So when the re-render occurs, how the createRef and useRef are behaving. Okay, when the re-render occurs, the createRef will create the reference again, whereas the useRef will not create the reference. So that's the reason we have created a state to showcase the component re-renders with the createRef and useRef. Fine, we have taken useRef and createRef from the React library itself and created some constants like this references here. So I will explain this part. So now what we are printing the current value of the reference and current value of the create reference. Okay, use reference current value and create reference current value. Just we are printing along with the state. Render index is a state. So when you click the button, render index would be updated. And now let's discuss this if statement. Why we wrote this and what's the logic behind this. So fine, as we discussed, we can give the initial value here in this first parameter. So if you're not giving that, the reference dot current, so this value would be undefined. Okay, initially if you're not giving the reference value, the value would be undefined here. So not undefined, what will happen? Not undefined, it will become true. Okay, so that's the reason for the useRef. For the first time when the component loads useRef, it will go here. As you have not given any initial value, it will go as a current undefined. Not undefined goes to the true. So that's the reason this if loop executes. So now we can also mute the value of the references. So that's the reason we are taking the reference value and dot current and we are assigning some render index value, state value we are assigning. So now the state value is 1. Fine. So now in first time in the component renders, this was happened for the useRef. Whereas coming to the createRef also the same thing happens. So as you have not given any initial value, so it will be having in dot current will having an undefined value in it initially. So now if you give not undefined, then what happens? It will return true. That's the reason the first initial load of the component, this if statement would be executed. Once it is executed, this current value reference from create ref dot current value, it will become 1. So for the both the states, when the component is loaded first time, it will be in this format. Okay, when if I click the button, okay, what happens? I'm modifying the state. I'm incrementing +1. The initial state is 1. Now I'm giving the state as 1 plus 1, 2. It means I'm modifying the state. Once the state is modified, what happens? The component will be re-rendered again. Okay, now when the component is re-rendered again, the proof is that this statement will not execute because now this is the second time component is re-rendered. Now the value here is not undefined. It will have the value of 1, right? So that's the reason. Now let's check. Not 1. It means 1 means true. Not 1 means false. So that's the reason you will not go into this if loop. So that is the proof that use effect will only, it means it will not consist of, if it is recreating the reference, this current value again, it should be undefined, right? It means it is not going into the if loop means it is not undefined. Its value is not undefined. That's the reason it is not going into the if loop. Whereas coming to the createRef, it will go into this if loop because for each component re-render, createRender will create the references. So that's the reason again this will create the reference. So that's the reason this current will, this createRef current value will become undefined, so that it will go into this if statement again. So again it will go and again it will increment. I mean it will assign the state, current state value to the this value. Render index value is 2 now, that you are going to assign to the current value. So in this way, we can prove that create reference is creating multiple references for component re-renders, whereas useRef is only created the reference once. Hope you understand this. So when the component is re-rendered, what happens here? The current value is not undefined. That's the reason we are not going into the if loop. Whereas createRef is again creating a new reference. So that's the reason in the current value, it will be undefined. So it is going into the if loop, and we are assigning the current value as the current state value. So let's see that with an example. So before seeing that, we need to enable this component in the here in the app component. I have created 3 different files and I have imported them in the app.js, and I'm rendering them. I'm commented it out. Now let's check it out, the output. So now we have current render value is 1, refs from the useRef is 1, refs from the createRef is 1. Now this is when the component is rendered for the initial time. Now if I click this button, what happens? The component is re-rendered, but the useRef, we have not created any ref again. Whereas createRef has created one more reference. So how many times the component is re-rendered, that many times the create reference will create the references. That many references would be created. Whereas for the useRef, only one reference would be created. So this is the best example, or the differences between the createRef and useRef. So coming to one more point we need to discuss regarding this useRef is, whenever the useRef, I mean, whenever the component is modified, I mean, whenever you can modify the value of the useRef. In sense, I am using the useRef here, the initial value is 0. In sense, countref.current is 0. Now, okay, you can increment, you can mute the value of the use references. But when you try to manipulate or modify the value, the re-renders will not occur. The component re-render will not be happen. It will not trigger the re-render. For that, let's see this example. Whenever this component is loaded, okay, this console will be rendered only once. This will only render once, okay. But this console can be rendered multiple times. If you click this button, this console would be incremented. Okay, component ref will be incremented multiple times as on when you click the button, but this component will not re-render. The point here to discuss is, if you update the useRef hook value, the component re-render will not occur. It will not trigger the component re-renders. If you want the component re-renders, we need to go for the use state hook, not for the useRef. We use useRef only to access or provide a way to access the DOM nodes. Okay, let's see this. Let's understand this. The re-render is not happening with the useRef. So insert this re-render. So component rendered. So this is a text we need to keep. So let's see. I will open the console here. So at the initial state, so if I reload it, the component is rendered. So it will be printing once. So as on when I click this, the counter would be incremented. It means the useRef count is incrementing, but the component is not re-rendering. So that is the second point we need to understand. So hope you understand about the React useRef hook. Try to watch the video, like why we need to go with the React references. Why can't we use IDs instead of references? So I will keep the video at the end. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for more videos.